Good afternoon. My name's Steve Young. This is my oral history interview for Liberty University. Today I'll be asking Judy Noacker 10 or so questions about her family history and some of her ancestor questions. During the interview. So, what makes it a little bit easier, she's also my mother. Okay. So, you're gonna have to, just so you know, that the camera, you'll have to speak up. Okay. Yeah. So both of us basically were born and raised here in Schuylkill County, Pennsylvania. Where did you grow up? What was the town that you grew up?
The town that I grew up in was called Mechanicsville, and that's just maybe 2 miles from Pottsville. It's just a little borough, very small area.
Okay, well, what was that like? What was the neighborhood like that you grew up in?
That was where I lived. It was small, only a few houses that had children, and everybody knew everybody, but everybody kind of kept to themselves.
So just so everybody knows, in the city of Pottsville is the only city in the county of Schuylkill County in the state of Pennsylvania, and Mechanicsville was one of the little tiny suburbs outside of Pottsville. What was one of the fondest memories that you had when you were growing up in Mechanicsville?
Well, everybody, like I said, everybody had their own family, but they couldn't come out and play every night. So we had the weekend, and we would play games on the corner, tag, hide and go seek, hit the wiki, things like that I don't know if they do anymore today. But we had a certain group. We all knew who we were. We all knew our parents, and we were all in view of our parents' home, and they would be in view of us, so they knew where we were and what we did.
Okay. So, do you know of growing up, since it was all you knew your family, and since a lot of the neighborhood knew, it was very family oriented. Do you knew of some of the ancestors that made our generation possible, like your grandparents, your great-grandparents?
I don't have any recollection of my great-grandparents. I don't ever remember a great-grandparent. My grandparents were very, very old. They were in their 80s. My grandmother lived with us for a good many years. Her name was Sarah, and she would protect me from anything, even my mother. If she would protect me as far as, don't holler at Judy. She was a protector, and she lived with us a while, and everybody in the house loved her. She was old. She was in her 80s.
That kind of like leads into the next question. What are some of the oldest memories you have of your grandparents?
Okay, the grandmother that lived with me, I called her Grammy. I remember her sitting. She had one area that she would sit in, and the only time that she would get up to move around was to go to the bathroom or to come out and eat. Any other time, she would sit in that same spot day in. Not because she was told to, but that's what she wanted to do. So my memory of her was, she didn't do anything. And if my mother did something she didn't like, she would tell her.
Mhm.
That's just the relationship that they had. My grandfather, he was from Austria, from the old country. And sometimes he'd come to the house like every weekend, and sometimes I couldn't understand him, and I didn't know why. And here he was speaking that language. And then he would speak English,
Right.
and then he would laugh at me. So we were close. We were very close.
So if your grandmother were alive today and she observed the way things are today, whether it's family or religion, what do you think she would be saying about the way things are today?
She'd say a lot of things that are negative. She would not like pretty much everything that's going on today in the world with the children, even with adults. She would not be happy.
Was she a very religious person?
No, I have to say no. Not. She did believe in God. I know that, but she was so old when I was growing up that I didn't see her do anything except keep a Bible on her nightstand.
Okay. What part of the county did our part of our family did they finally settle down, and finally did they call home?
As we were growing up, or now?
As you were growing up.
It was still Mechanicsville. I lived there all my life. Now, the others, some had moved away, you know, some of them were older than me, and they moved to another area, wherever it may have
Like
been.
Hectorsville.
Well, Hectorsville was totally different from Mechanicsville. They lived there. The only time they came to Mechanicsville was to visit, and then they would go back to Hectorsville.
Okay. Many of the ancestors, when they migrated from their homeland to live here in America, and doing so, they brought with them a lot of the traditions that they had from home. Can you think of any traditions that your grandparents or your great-grandparents, that or anything that was handed down from generation to generation, that you may have seen that you did every year or every so often, that may have been a tradition?
I don't know that I can remember that, only that my grandparents, my grandfather would come from a place called Hectorsville and come in and have dinner with us. And since my grandmother was already there, she would have dinner with us, and then we would just sit around and talk. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, unless it comes to me later.
So it basically, so in a way, you could say that by doing that led to what we now know as the Sunday dinner that we had.
Yes, yes. We would have a Sunday dinner at my mother's house when you and your brother were growing up. Yeah, that was another tradition, which kind of, once you got older, it just didn't happen anymore, because we had our own family then, and yous got married and yous had your own traditions.
So, going with the tradition, many families also, family traditions also revolve around the church. For example, going to Christmas Eve service. Were there any Christian traditions that may have been handed down? Did you all go to the same church, like your mom, your father?
My dad couldn't go to church. My dad had physical ailments, serious ones. And my mother could not go because she was taking care of my dad. So I didn't go for a long time, and then she thought, okay, it's time for you to go. So she got me started, and I don't know, I was up in years, like I wasn't a teenager or anything. I was, you know. So I finally got started in church. I started in Sunday school, and that's the same church that I was baptized in the same church that I had confirmation in. And I just continued to go there and practice what was taught to me.
Okay. Many families also have heirlooms, such as artwork and photos and diaries, church memberships. Do we have any heirlooms that may have been handed down, not maybe handed down over the generations? That's kind of one of the things that is very hard to, because a lot of things don't last over the years.
I don't even know if they're heirlooms, but they're very, very old. I have a necklace, and I tried to get it appraised, and for as old as it is, they told me it wasn't worth that much. And they might be, you know, and I have maybe a couple of rings, something like that. Artwork, no, I have a Bible, a very, very big Bible. Yeah, it was nice.
We had mentioned before about your father being a police officer. Was not only a man of authority, but he was also a local celebrity. Everyone knew who he was. What were some of the memories that you had of him being a police officer? And like I said, I know I'm not, he wasn't a police officer. He had a different title there because it was such a small town.
Yeah, he was known as the Chief Burgess of Mechanicsville. And most of the time, nothing happened. But there were a few times when things were needed, like a domestic dispute, things like that. Somebody maybe was drunk. And he was paired up with another one in Mechanicsville, and his name was Larry Seaman. So they worked together, and they worked really well together. And then if something needed to be done in Pottsville, he would go to Pottsville. Now what I remember is he would go to the old A&P in Pottsville, and he would help direct traffic or help them park, things of that sort. And he just did what he was supposed to do where he was needed.
Okay. So in the past 100 years have seen dramatic changes in almost everything. It's seen changes in technology. It's seen changes in the family structure, travel, and even in the language that we speak. What is the biggest change in the world that you've noticed from the time that you've been a youth till now?
I have to say, lack of guidance in some cases, disrespect in a lot of cases. I probably could go on and on in that respect. No, I can't think of the word. Probably no guidance for the children, in general. They just do what they want to do. So there is no guidance as far as I can see. I'm not saying that's everybody, but I see it in a lot of families outside of my house. I see it down the street. I see it.
Do you, now I know this isn't on here, but we hear it a lot. Do you believe that one of the reasons may be that once you start pulling God out of the equation, that's when that starts to happen?
I'm going to say yes to that, but I want to even say a lot of times, and I mean a lot of times, God isn't even in the equation. There is no upbringing, I want to use the word religion, beliefs is probably a better word. I think there's a lot of that lost.
Okay. Out of all of the people who have come and gone in your life, who has had the most impact, and what advice has stuck with you to this day that they gave you?
My mother. Because for a long, long time I only had my mother. I didn't have my father. And she stuck by me from the time I was born up until the time she passed away. She taught me right from wrong. She taught me how to cook. And right now I don't even like to cook. But she shadowed me as being a good person, tried to be a good parent. She was my shining star.
Excellent. Okay, well, that's it. Thank you very much for all of your help. That will conclude the interview for today. Thank you very much for everybody for listening. And that's it. Have a great afternoon.